From the very first moment of your life, a silent teacher has been shaping every thought, every fear, and every hope you carry. This teacher is your mother, the doorway through which you first learned what it means to be safe, loved, or unseen. Yet most people walk through life without ever truly seeing this door. They miss the hidden keys it holds, keys that unlock the deepest layers of their emotions and reveal patterns that have silently controlled them for decades. Today, we will explore a truth rarely spoken aloud. The way your mother influenced your inner world is not just a story of nurture or neglect, but a map of your emotional architecture. Each sigh, each unspoken word, each act of care or distance has left invisible marks, shaping who you became and the wounds you still carry. Understanding these marks is not about blame. It is about uncovering the master key to your own healing. By the end of this journey, you will see your past from a perspective few ever reach. You will recognize the emotional imprints you inherited, the unconscious habits you repeat, and the inner locks that have held you back from true clarity and freedom. You will begin to discover how to release these chains with awareness, discipline, and compassion, tools rooted deeply in ancient Shaolin wisdom. Stay with me, because this insight can transform the way you relate to yourself, to your mother, and to every relationship that mirrors this first bond. Welcome to Shaolin Soulfire. Here, we ignite the quiet power within the mind, body, and spirit. Subscribe now and step into a journey of awareness, mastery, and profound inner transformation. Every storm begins quietly in the soil before the first leaf trembles. The reactions you carry, the sudden anger, the silent fear, the compulsive need to please, are like branches swaying in the wind, visible and restless. Yet the true source of their movement lies unseen, deep within the roots. Shaolin monks understand this principle with every fiber of their practice. You cannot correct what you cannot first observe, and you cannot observe what you refuse to trace to its origin. Your mother, in ways subtle and profound, planted the earliest roots of your emotional life. Each response you have today, each habit or fear, grows from those first connections. A harsh word, a withheld embrace, a fleeting glance of disappointment. These early patterns imprinted themselves silently, shaping how you perceive safety, trust, and love. To touch the branches without knowing the root is to chop at shadows, leaving the source untouched. Healing begins when you turn your gaze inward with courage and patience. Study the root. Notice the moments that shaped you, even the ones you barely remember. Sit with the feelings you once dismissed. Listen to the echoes of your mother's own struggles, for they are entwined with your own. There is no rush. Shaolin teaching is not about force, but about awareness, balance, and timing. As you learn to trace these invisible roots, you begin to see the patterns clearly. The branches stop moving uncontrollably. You see why certain situations trigger old responses, why certain voices awaken fear or longing. Awareness alone does not heal, but it lays the foundation. By honoring the root, you create the space where transformation can grow naturally, like a tree that strengthens from its core before reaching for the sky. The first mirror you ever looked into was not glass, but a pair of eyes. In those eyes, you first sensed your value, your voice, your right to exist. Every smile, every frown, every word unspoken became a reflection that shaped your sense of self. Yet the mirror was never perfectly clean. It carried dust, smudges, and distortions, remnants of fears, expectations, and unhealed wounds that belonged not to you, but to the one who held it. It is easy to believe that what is reflected back defines who you are. Many live their lives chasing approval, fearing judgment, or bending to fit a reflection that is flawed. Ancient masters teach that true clarity comes when you recognize the mirror is not the source. The reflection is a story of another life, the life of your mother, her experiences, her limitations, her unspoken battles. Understanding this distinction is a subtle but profound act of inner mastery. Discipline of the mind begins here, to see without attaching, to observe without becoming entangled. Every judgment, every doubt, every need for validation rooted in that first mirror can be gently separated from the self. Meditation, mindful awareness, and disciplined reflection create the space to perceive the truth. that you are not a shadow of another's life, but a unique presence capable of choice, strength, and clarity. Through this awareness, the mirror ceases to control. It becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The past no longer dictates your perception of worth, and the echoes of someone else's insecurities no longer shape your inner terrain. In this calm recognition lies freedom, freedom to define your value, to speak with authenticity, and to inhabit your place in the world with dignity. The first mirror taught lessons, but it does not hold the ultimate truth. You do. Many of the burdens you carry were placed gently, invisibly, long before you could understand them. The sharp edges of anger, the quiet walls of silence, the weight of fear, these were not born from your actions, but inherited from the life of another. Your mother moved through her world with wounds unseen, shaping her words, gestures, and presence. In this, you absorb patterns not of your choosing, learning to navigate life through the echoes of her own pain. Ancient wisdom reminds us that suffering is rarely isolated. It travels quietly through generations, like water tracing the contours of hidden valleys. Shaolin masters teach that to confront the surface without seeking the source is to fight shadows. True mastery begins with recognitions, seeing that her anger, her distance, her anxieties were reflections of her own unhealed story, not a verdict on your worth. This recognition demands calm, courage. It asks for a steady mind that observes without reacting, a heart disciplined enough to hold space for understanding. Compassion emerges not as surrender or justification, but as clarity. To see the origins of inherited pain is to unlock a deeper awareness, a key that opens the possibility of freedom. You are no longer chained to the patterns she lived, yet you honor the echoes of her journey without absorbing them as your own. Through this awareness, discipline becomes gentle but firm. You learn to respond with mindfulness rather than instinct, to choose peace where old habits once ruled. The story hidden in her life ceases to dominate yours. Instead, it becomes a teacher, a guide to resilience, patience, and conscious presence. In understanding the root of inherited pain, the mind settles, the heart softens, and the spirit awakens to the subtle power of compassion without compromise. The mind often carries invisible scripts written long before it could reason. From the earliest moments, your emotional responses were quietly shaped, patterned, and reinforced. How you face rejection, how you reach for love, how you carry tension in your body during stress. All of these were first learned by watching and absorbing the behaviors around you. Your mother's responses were the blueprint, and without conscious awareness, these patterns became automatic, repeating across situations without pause or question. Ancient disciplines, like those of the Shaolin, teach that mastery begins with observation. The warrior does not fight blindly. The mind first traces the movement of energy, understands its origin, and then guides it with intent. So it is with the emotions inherited from your earliest relationships. By observing your reactions as they arise, without judgment or suppression, you begin to see the threads connecting present behavior to past influence. Discipline is cultivated through patience and mindful reflection. Each emotional reaction becomes an opportunity to study, not to condemn. Notice the pull of anger, the craving for approval, the instinct to withdraw. These are signals, not truths. Recognizing them as learned responses allows you to separate what is truly yours from what was inherited. With consistent awareness, the automatic patterns begin to loosen. The mind, once a stage for repetition, becomes a place of conscious choice. You start responding instead of reacting. This is the essence of personal mastery, not denying the programming you carry, but understanding it, tracing it to its origin, and choosing your own path forward. By uncovering the key of emotional programming, the locks of unconscious habit slowly release, and a deeper freedom emerges, a freedom rooted in awareness, discipline, and the quiet strength of the present moment. In the quiet of the monastery, the novice learns a lesson older than words. Stillness is strength. Before the hand strikes, before the foot moves, before the breath is drawn, the mind must be calm, clear, and attentive. This principle, taught for centuries in Shaolin halls, applies not only to the body but to the heart and mind. Every emotion, Every impulse, every reaction is energy in motion, and without awareness, it can sweep through your life unnoticed. When the memories or triggers connected to your mother arise, they often carry the weight of inherited patterns: fear, anger, longing, or resentment. The mind wants to act immediately, to respond as it always has. Yet Shaolin discipline teaches to pause, to observe, and to feel without surrendering. This pause is not weakness. It is mastery. In that stillness, the instinctual reactions begin to lose their automatic grip. Mindfulness becomes the practice of witnessing the storm without being swept away. Notice the rise of emotion, the tightening of the chest, the pull of old habits. Accept their presence, but do not obey them blindly. Each moment of non-reaction is a choice, a conscious break in a chain that has extended for generations. In learning to respond rather than react, you sever the invisible loops that have bound you to patterns inherited long before your own understanding. Over time, this discipline becomes effortless. The heart steadies, the mind clarifies, and the spirit gains space to act from wisdom rather than impulse. What once controlled you, the echoes of your mother's responses, the unseen scripts of childhood, no longer dictate your behavior. In the stillness before action, the seeds of true freedom are planted, and with patience and practice, these seeds grow into the calm, resilient strength that defines the path of personal mastery. To hold the key is not merely to possess it, but to carry it with steadiness and clarity. The mind, like a calm pond, reflects reality only when undisturbed by ripples of fear or impulse. Developing this calm, observing mind is the first step in mastering the emotional patterns inherited from your earliest relationships. Each reaction, each memory, each lingering anxiety can be approached with gentle attention rather than resistance. Imagine the discipline of a monk who sits in meditation, observing the rhythm of the breath, in and out, rise and fall, without interference, without judgment. So too can your mind watch the patterns that surface when old maternal triggers awaken. A sharp word, a subtle disappointment, a memory long buried, all can be acknowledged without being consumed. This witness awareness transforms what once controlled you into material, to study, to understand, and eventually to release. Fear loses its power in the presence of steady observation. The pull to repeat inherited behaviors, to react with old defense mechanisms, begins to loosen. Awareness becomes a form of inner armor, not rigid or suppressive, but fluid and attentive. By observing without immediate response, you create a space where choice enters. You are no longer bound to automatic loops. You can decide how to respond or whether to respond at all. This practice cultivates freedom as much as it cultivates strength. Over time, what once triggered chaos or pain becomes a mirror for reflection, not a call to action. Holding the key without fear is the art of maintaining inner equilibrium while facing the echoes of the past. In this stillness, you begin to reclaim mastery over the self, the mind, and the inherited patterns that once held silent dominion over your life. The stories we tell ourselves often begin before we can even speak, quietly shaping every choice, every thought, every belief. I am not enough. I must earn love. I am only seen through the eyes of others. These narratives settle deep within, forming invisible chains that guide the movements of the heart. Yet these stories are not destiny. They are keys, handed down before understanding, waiting for the conscious mind to notice them and decide their value. Ancient masters teach that the mind is both brush and canvas. The past may have painted patterns across it, but awareness allows the present to choose new strokes. Rewriting your origin story is an act of discipline and courage, a deliberate shaping of identity rather than passive inheritance. It requires the calm clarity to examine each old belief, the wisdom to see which belong to your authentic self, and the patience to release what does not serve. In this practice, the old keys, the ones that once locked you into fear, shame, or dependency, are gently replaced. New keys are chosen. I am whole. I deserve love without conditions. I am free to define my own worth. Each new phrase, each conscious belief becomes a foundation for actions aligned with inner mastery. rather than reactions dictated by old wounds. The process is not sudden. It unfolds through reflection, meditation, and mindful discipline. Each moment of awareness strengthens the new identity until it feels as natural as the patterns once inherited. By choosing your own keys, you reclaim the narrative of your life. The past remains a teacher, but no longer a ruler. With patience and inner focus, you step fully into the self you were always capable of becoming, unbound, authentic, and masterful. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a bridge back to the past, a way to reconcile with those who caused pain. But ancient wisdom teaches a different path. Forgiveness is not for them, it is for the self. It is a key, quietly unlocking the doors of your own spirit, freeing the mind and heart from burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. Every unhealed wound, every lingering resentment, every memory of hurt shapes the landscape of your inner world. Holding on to these memories binds energy to the past, repeating cycles of pain and limitation. True mastery arises when you see that forgiveness is an act of liberation, a conscious choice to release what no longer serves, without waiting for apology, recognition, or change in the other. The Shaolin approach to life offers guidance here. Discipline of the mind begins with stillness and awareness. Sit with the emotions, acknowledge the weight, and observe how they affect your body and your thoughts. Then, gently, let them go. Forgiveness is not denial. It is the deliberate loosening of the grip that old wounds hold over your spirit. With each moment of release, the heart grows lighter, the mind steadier, and the inner space expands, creating room for clarity, presence, and true self-mastery. This practice does not erase memory, nor does it condone harm. It simply removes the chains that keep the spirit tethered to events that belong to the past. By forgiving for freedom, not reunion, you step into the rhythm of your own life, unburdened and sovereign. In this space, energy once trapped in resentment transforms into calm strength, and the path toward authentic presence and inner mastery becomes clear and unobstructed. Every family carries an invisible current, a flow of emotions, fears, and unspoken patterns that moves quietly from one generation to the next. These currents shape how we react, how we love, and how we protect ourselves, often without our conscious awareness. Understanding your mother is the first step in tracing this lineage, revealing the origins of the emotional currents that have long guided your life. Ancient teachings remind us that mastery is not domination over others, but sovereignty over oneself. By observing the ways in which inherited patterns have influenced your thoughts, behaviors, and relationships, you begin to see where repetition has unconsciously taken hold. Anger that flares without reason, fear that lingers, the compulsion to seek approval. All are echoes from the past. Recognizing them is the first act of true discipline. To become the master of your emotional lineage is to take responsibility for what you carry. It is a quiet, steady power, grounded in awareness and patience. Each moment of mindful observation, each deliberate choice to respond rather than react, weakens the cycle. You stop passing old wounds forward, breaking the invisible chain that has moved silently through generations. This mastery does not erase your history, nor does it diminish the lessons learned. Instead, it transforms them into a conscious inheritance, strength, clarity, and the capacity to love and act from awareness rather than habit. By reclaiming the currents of emotion that once controlled you, you step fully into freedom. You become the calm source, the still point from which new patterns can emerge. The power to change the lineage is not found in force or control, but in disciplined awareness, steady presence, and the courage to honor the past while choosing a new path for the future. When the old locks of inherited patterns and unhealed wounds are finally loosened, a new space opens, a space where choice replaces compulsion and awareness replaces automatic reaction. This is the fertile ground where new emotional patterns can be consciously planted, nurtured with care, and allowed to grow. Each deliberate action, each mindful breath, and each moment of reflection becomes a seed of transformation. Ancient disciplines, like those of Shaolin, teach that mastery is cultivated through repetition, patience, and intent. The mind, once trained, shapes the body. The body, once disciplined, reinforces the mind. Similarly, creating new emotional patterns requires steady attention. Calmness arises through intentional stillness. Boundaries are drawn through conscious recognition of what serves the self. Clarity emerges from observing the mind without judgment, and presence is strengthened by returning to the now moment after moment. These new patterns are not superficial fixes, they are the infrastructure of a renewed self, built with care, rooted in awareness, and reinforced through practice. Over time, they become instinctive, a natural response to life, replacing the old, reactive habits with grounded, deliberate ways of being. The energy that once fueled anxiety, fear, or compulsive behavior is transformed into focus, resilience, and emotional stability. Mindful intent is the key. Each choice to respond rather than react, to breathe through tension rather than succumb, to hold space for yourself rather than give away your energy, strengthens the new self. In this way, life becomes a continuous practice of self-mastery. By consciously creating these patterns, the individual steps fully into sovereignty over their own mind and heart, discovering that the truest power is the quiet, disciplined cultivation of a life lived with clarity, balance, and presence. To heal deeply, it begins with recognizing that your mother is more than a chapter in your story. She is the first key to understanding the patterns, fears, and beliefs that shape your emotional identity. By practicing stillness, mindful awareness, and compassionate clarity, you begin to see the roots beneath your reactions, uncover the narratives you inherited, and gently release the weight of generational pain. This journey is not a single step, but a series of conscious choices. Each moment of reflection, each pause before reaction, each act of forgiveness and self-compassion strengthens the path toward true self-mastery. The lessons of the past become guides rather than chains, and the power to shape your life rests quietly in your hands. Carry this awareness into your daily life. Observe your responses, honor your emotions, and cultivate calm, grounded presence. Small, consistent acts of mindful practice build the foundation for a resilient, balanced, and authentic self. May this understanding bring peace to your heart and clarity to your mind. If this video has offered insight or inspiration, support the journey by liking the video and subscribing to Shaolin Soulfire, where we explore the ancient wisdom that lights the path to inner mastery.